I'm working in the New Perspectives Microsoft Access 2010 textbook. I'm in Tutorial 1. I'm beginning on page AC7 and I'm going to show you how to create your first database in Microsoft Access 2010, create a table, and add some data to that table. I'll start by opening Microsoft Access, and you can open it in any way with which you are comfortable. Now when you look at my screen, you're going to see that I have to do quite a bit of scrolling around on this screen in order to get to places that are probably readily apparent on your screen. In order to make my screen visible to you in the tiny window that we're given in YouTube, I run my application in a very small window. If we look over at page AC8, we're asked to create a new database. I'm going to click on blank, and then I'm going to browse, and I'm going to browse out to where I want to store this database. Now your instructor will give you probably some suggestions or maybe even instructions on how to store your databases. I've created a file folder on my flash drive that is named for the class. Inside of that I have my data, some examples, my homework, and my practice exercises. This is a practice exercise. I'm going to put it in my practice folder. My instructor has asked that my database be named with the first 5 letters of my last name and the name of the database. I'm just going to simply type in student, or the first 5 letters of student, and the name of the database is going to be Belmont. Or click OK. After doing that, the database has still not been created. It's not created until you click Create. Now the database is open. When the database opens in Access 2010, you see the navigation pane on the left-hand side, and you'll see a new table called Table 1 on the right-hand side. This table has not been saved. In earlier versions of Access, when you would open up the database, you would actually see nothing. And many users found this disconcerting. They didn't quite know what to do. So in Access 2007 and Access 2010, when you create the database, at the beginning, when you come in, you will see a table that has been started for you. The book often says to close the navigation pane. It's really not necessary to close the navigation pane every time it tells you to. The reason it is asking you to close the navigation pane, as you can see in my particular example, I have very little screen real estate. And in order to utilize the space that I do have, I would be closing the navigation pane. If you have a large screen and you're running at high resolution, there's no reason to keep closing that every time. I'll close mine and we'll begin. I've been asked to create a table. The table is going to be called Contract, and it's going to contain 5 fields. You will see those on page AC9 at the bottom of the page. A field for contract number. Contract number in this case is what we call an artificial key. If you look at the data that we have in this table, there is no field that uniquely identifies the contract. And in order to then create a primary key in all tables, there are some exceptions, but keep in mind that usually all tables need to have a primary key. So the book has asked us to create an artificial key, and that is contract num. Over on page AC10, it talks about decision making for naming database fields and objects in Access. If you've worked in prior versions of Access, you may have seen some flip-flopping on this, where first we have no spaces in object names, and then we have spaces in object names, and now we're back to no spaces in object names. Now I believe that the reason for this is that Access will handle spaces and numerical characters and object names. Many other databases won't. You cannot use spaces, you cannot use numerical characters like a minus sign used as a hyphen. But Access will allow it. But if you plan to migrate this database somewhere else or to another database, you're better off sticking with the rules that have been around for a long time, and no spaces and no numerical characters in field names or object names. Now we're going to start at the bottom of page AC10. I'm going to right-click ID, and I'm going to rename the field. Now, it's very hard to see in the colors that I have selected, so I'm just going to have to hope that I key this correctly. And if I don't, I can always go back and change it. So I'm going to key in contract num, and I'm going to press my tab key. If I were ready to start my next field, I could go ahead and click to add a field. But what I've been asked to do here is to actually click down below contract num where it says new. And in that, go to the Fields tab in the Table Tools, and I'm going to change the data type for this field from an auto number. The auto number is the default data type for the primary key in a brand new table that Access creates for you. And I've been asked to change this data type from auto number to text. So now I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now I'm over on page AC12. I'm going to add the rest of my fields. Those fields will be customer ID. Next we will have contract amount. Then we will have signing date and contract type. Now, according to the text on page AC12, we are to go to the Add and Delete group and click Text. Now it's going to automatically insert a new field for me, and the data type for that particular field will be text. I'm going to type in customer ID. Remember, no spaces. Now when I press my tab key, it's going to move me over one column. So where you now see click to add right here, it's going to move me to that column, and it's going to open the drop-down list of possible data types. I don't have to go up to the add and delete every time. And databases are still really meant to be navigated using the keyboard. And so by pressing the tab key and then using my cursor key or simply typing in the first letter of the field that I want, I can go ahead and select one. And this one's going to be currency. Since there's two occurrences of C on this field, it takes me to the first one in alphabetical order. So I'm going to have to escape out of that and actually cursor down to currency and press my enter key. I'll go ahead and type in contract amount, press my tab key, and this next one is going to be date and time. And I press the D, and I'm going to call this signing date. Wish I could see this better. And I'll press my tab key and text, T for text, and this last one is going to be contract type. And I'll press my enter key. And escape will get rid of that menu. Let's take a look and see how this worked out for us. So I've clicked in the first field, contract type, and I look at my data type up here, it's text. I'm going to press my tab key. I have text for my customer ID, and that's what I wanted. I have currency for my contract amount, and you can see I misspelled contract amount, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. Tab, I push D in signing date, which gave me the date time data type. Contract type is also text. So I'm going to come back here to contract amount, and I'll rename field, and I'm going to backspace this out and try it again. There we go. Now if you want to resize these columns, only choose the ones that actually are fields, and then double click on any one of their borders between the columns. Don't choose the click to add as well. When I click that one, I get the drop down menu, then I have to press my escape key, and then when I click between them, the sizing doesn't work right. So only grab the fields that have field names in them, place your mouse pointer over the border between any two of the columns and double click, and that will resize the columns to fit. Since I've set up my data types properly, keying in the data is just simply a matter of keying it in. And if we take a look over at page AC14, in figure 1-10, you see the data that you are instructed to enter. I'll go ahead and enter the first one for us, and then I'm going to pause the video, enter all the rest of them. So with the first one, it is 11001. Just press your tab key or your enter key, And oops, I started in the wrong place. So for my first contract number, I'm going to key in 3011. You can press your Enter or your Tab key. I'm more used to pressing my Tab key. That's the way that we did it in earlier versions of Access, but the Enter key works just fine. 11001 and 400. You don't need to put in the $ or the .00 because you formatted this as a currency field with a currency data type. It's going to go in just fine for you. The next one is the date, and it is 2/9/13, and you do need to put in the slashes because we've not formatted, we've not set up an input mask to put those slashes in for you. And your contract type is residential landscape plan. I'm going to misspell residential because Access does have spell check. If I can remember where it's at. Ah, there it is. It's on the Home tab on the Records group. And it will find misspellings in the data. It will not find misspellings that are in the field names. I'll go ahead and change that. There we go. As you can see, the rest of the data has now been entered. This is from Figure 1-10 on page AC14. Now I'm going to resize the column widths one more time and save the table. Normally I wouldn't wait this long to save the table. I really recommend that you save often. Go ahead and resize the column widths, and I'm going to place my mouse pointer in the field name for the first column, click, hold, and drag into the last column, and remember not to select the Click to Add column. Place my mouse pointer between any two of the columns and double click. What you're going to notice is that Access resizes the column to the current view, and so the contract type column is not resized wide enough. That's the way it works. It will resize to fit the fields within the current view. So if I want that column to be wider, I'm going to have to scroll over and then resize that column again. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and save this table, and the table will be saved as contract. And that is the end of this segment.